All right. For the midterm, you had 90 minutes for one question. For the final, you have 2 questions for 3 hours. Right. That's just how I have it for your midterm. You have a 1,000 word limit. Okay. So there's 2 constraints: time and space. Okay. So those always are constraints. I think most of you finished on time. A couple of you wrote at the end, frankly, I ran out of time, which I always kind of chuckle at. It's like, okay, thank you for the note. I appreciate it. It's honest, right? You know, you're explaining why you cut short. But when I see that number 5 is blank or number 5 is really short, I know, okay, this person ran out of time. Some of you also ran out of space, which is that you wrote excellent answers, but you had to just shorten one answer because you ran out of space. I stopped reading at 1,000 words. A lot of you wrote like a lot for question 1 because you weren't really thinking. And you wrote like 400 words for question number 1. And then you had really bitty short answers for later. Don't do that. 1,000 words over 5 questions is 200, 200, 200, 200. Space yourself out. I think or one more 200, 500. 2 times 5. In the exam software, there's a character count. There's also a word count. There's a little character count box. There's a document icon. Write this down, everyone, please. In the exam software, Examplify, there's a feature for character count. There's a little icon that says character count. Click the document icon, and a box pops up that gives you the word count. Right? That's what you have to do. Okay. All right. So then we go to the question. At the beginning of the question, I have these instructions, and someone in my other section asked, should we read the call to question first? And I kind of got angry. Yes, read the damn question, right? I put it there for a reason. It's up there first. It's the first thing on the page. Read the damn question because it'll give you important information, right? Of course. I would read the entire exam through at least twice before you write a word. Take 15 minutes and read the question straight through. It's short, right? 2 questions. I'm sorry, a page and a half. It's not long. I'm sure you've had a lot of much longer fact patterns in your first semester, right? This is short. I make them short for a reason, to give you time to think about it. But the flip side is every sentence is important. I will very rarely put something in for no reason, right? Now, it might be in there to trick you, right? It might put you in a sentence that's meant to sort of lead you astray. And a lot of you fell for those tricks. But everything's there quite deliberately. So read the damn question carefully, please. Okay. So question number 1 begins. You're a mediator. There are 2 castaways on an island. There are 5 disputes. There are no statutes or regulations. Instead, you rely on common law and natural law principles. Why am I telling you this? There's a hunting question, right? I always ask a hunting question. I always do. Okay. Question begins. Tom and Wilson crash on a deserted island. They think they're the first people there, like this deserted island. No one's ever been there. The island's divided in half. Tom sets up camp on North Acre. The north side. He calls it North Acre. Wilson sets up a camp on the south side. He calls it South Acre. If you have never seen the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks, that's where I got it from, right? Tom Hanks was there, and his friend's name was Wilson. It was a volleyball. That was his friend in the movie. Here you can talk about discovery doctrine, right? Johnson versus McIntosh, right? Acquisition by discovery of deserted land. There's no conquest here because they don't have to fight anyone over it, but it's merely discovery of new territory. And that fact becomes important later. Why? Because there are disputes over stuff found on that property. And depending on whether or not Tom and Wilson own their property, they may own the boar, or they may own the gold coin, or they may own the flashlight, right? The things that are found in their property depend on who owns that property. So that becomes a very important point. Questions so far? All right. So next paragraph, we learn, excuse me, there's a freshwater river that begins in North Acre, flows across the mountain range, through Southacre and spills into the ocean. And the facts tell us that there's more than enough water to satisfy their personal needs. Why is that fact important? Well, you have to decide if we're dealing with the Western rule or the Eastern rule, right? And one of the criteria for the Eastern rule is that there's a lot of water. The Western rule is where it's very dry. So this is probably going to be an Eastern rule jurisdiction. That would be my argument. And we learned that both Wilson and Tom begin to draw water from it. It's not clear who got there first. They probably got there right at the same time, right? It doesn't say. Okay, we'll come back to the water a little bit later. Okay, so we have the paragraph in the hunt. Pay very close attention to the hunt, and also pay attention to where the animal is at any given point in time. Okay. Okay, so Wilson discovers there's a pack of boars on his property. He begins a hunt at dawn, right? So he's really like Pearson and Post, right? He's like Post, the hunter, right? He's like oh God, which one's which? He's like the hunter in Pearson. I was inverting in my head, right? He's getting ready to roll. Okay. He makes a spear out of a branch with a rock on the tip. Okay. He throws the spear. All right. We've discussed a couple cases about using tools to capture an animal. We discussed Pearson, and we also discussed Genvy Rich. And both of those cases recognize that you can capture an animal without laying hands on it, right? Without physically laying hands. You can use tools. You can use nets. You can use spears. In Gen, you had a custom that if you threw this bomb lance and it made a mark on the whale, that would be enough to indicate that you captured it, even if it washed ashore and someone else caught it. But here they throw a spear and it grazes the tail. Now, graze just means, sort of just like brushes by. Is that enough for capture? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be enough, right? It probably wouldn't even leave a mark. That's you can tell whose it was. There's not clear there's even a custom of hunting boar because they're on a deserted island. But even if you're not sure, one of the tests is, have you deprived the animal of its natural liberty? And we learn the very next sentence that you did not deprive it of its liberty because it continues to run away, right? So the spear didn't do a damn thing. The boar runs to the North Acre. Now, when the animal was on South Acre, we had the doctrine of rationing solely, which was kind of in Keeble, right? The idea that you own the property, that a person who owns property has the wild animals on it. But the animal goes from North Acre to South Acre. From South Acre to North Acre. And once it crosses the border, it's now rationing solely for Tom. And Tom starts chasing as well. We learn that they both corner it at the same time. Unclear who had the advantage. The animal jumps into the river and starts swimming. Can boars swim? I have no idea, but just bear with me, right? But then the water freezes over. A freak accident. The boar is stuck. Is the boar still a fugitive resource? I mean, is frozen water still a fugitive resource? Who owns the water, right? Who owns the river? Has the animal been deprived of its natural liberty? Did someone capture it? Tom and Wilson try to dig out the boar, and they can't because the ice is too thick. Then the river thaws, the boar floats downstream, Wilson pulls out of the water. He was the first person to actually lay hands on it. Tom asserts that he has the strongest claim to the boar. Wilson disagrees. He skins the boar, eats it, and makes it into a coat. Okay. Who has the strongest claim to the boar? Right? Well, actually, no, I framed the question. I said, right, who has a stronger claim to the boar, Tom or Wilson? You have to answer the question. Is it Tom or Wilson? You have to say it's Tom or it's Wilson and explain why. At a minimum here, you should be talking about Pearson, about Gen, about Keeble. People talk about Papa v. Hayashi, which was fine, right? I want you to use the cases to say that, oh, this case is like X, so this case is different than Y. Right, let me show you the A+ answer just for a moment to show you what I'm looking for. Here, and by the way, the hybrid A plus answer wasn't actually for one student. What I actually did was I took the best answer from each paper. So whoever got the best answer on question number 1, right, and whoever got the best answer question number 2, I sort of merged them all together. So these are all 10s. Right, but just look at this answer, right? The boar here is very natural, a wild animal. There's several precedents. Under the Pearson v. Post majority rule, right? Under the dissent rule. This follows Locke labor theory. Under Gen v. Rich, right? Under Keeble. At the very end, weighing all these rules, Wilson has the strongest claim to the boar. Perfect answer, right? This is the sort of thing you should model yourself on, right? I mean, it's hard. Not everyone can do this, right? I recognize your different, different test taking skills, but this is the sort of thing I'm looking for. If you can pull this off, this gets you the A plus. Okay. Questions for me? Questions? Yeah, go ahead, Aria.
Just to clarify, you kind of want the I-R-A-R-A.
No. A, just A, my friend.
Oh.
The analysis is where it's at. I don't need you to spell out the IRAC. I want the analysis. You're going to find, and the LRW professors hate when I say this, but you're going to find that Iraq becomes very unhelpful after the first year of law school. You drop it. It's a crutch, right? It helps you thinking about writing, but it becomes more natural that you're not doing the sort of artificial 3 or 4 part answer. So really the analysis is where you jump into it, right? What you need to say is the facts here are similar to this case, or they're different to this case, right? You compare and contrast the different analysis. We don't need full, here are the facts in Pearson, here was a holding in Pearson, this lengthy recitation. I don't need that. Okay? You don't look satisfied.
No, I just mean so in the sample answer, it was kind of in Pearson v. Post. I'm not saying write out the whole rule, but you kind of want that as just kind of signaling that this is what the analysis will be.
Yeah, just one sentence is all it takes. Lisa?
I just wanted a clarification about one of the rules. In Pearson v. Post, they talked about how you can establish property in wild animals. At least what I got out of it was by mortally wounding or capturing from a distance.
Right.
But then you mentioned that one test is also have you deprived the animal of its natural liberty. So is it? I thought when we learned about Pearson v. Post, I took away that the mortally wounding part was important. But I don't think after taking your midterm, I'm not getting the idea that the mortally wounding part is important. It's maybe just a wounding to the extent that you deprive it of its natural liberty. Is that the case?
Well, in Pearson, there were 2 opinions, right? There was a majority and there was a dissent, right? The majority talks about depriving of natural liberty. And the majority also talks about mortal wounding, right? Look at both of them. So the short answer is yes. Right. Pearson put out a lot of different statements. So, maybe it's that mortal wounding is depriving of its natural liberty, that when you inflict a wound of such a severe nature, the animal has been deprived of its natural liberty. I think we might be saying the same thing.
Okay. So it's like a square and rectangle thing.
Well, a square is not a rectangle, but a rectangle. No, a rectangle is not a square, but a square is a rectangle. No. Yes, that's right. No geometry. No geometry. I'll confuse people even more.
It's like one fits into the other, the category of the other, but
yes.
Not. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Alyssa. What else? I encourage you to go back to Ria's question a minute ago. To go through the A+ answer even if you got the right answer and you got most of your points, to just see how they're structured. Like that's why I give you that sort of sample to see how to structure answers. It's the best way for me to do it. All right, it's not me telling you what I would like to do. I'm showing you what your classmates did, and if they can do it, you can do it too. Luis, your hand shot up. Did you have a question? Luis, you there? You're on. I can't hear you, Luis.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Okay, yeah, I got you.
Yeah, for some reason my AirPods don't work whenever I need to talk, but I can hear. So on my, I guess, answer, you commented why was it Tom's property, and I wasn't sure what more I had to say about Tom. So could you like elaborate on how far with Tom you wanted me to go, I guess?
Discovery doctrine. Or in other words,
so I didn't mention that.
Yeah, that's a biggie.
In my
right?
first answer.
Yeah, in other words, if you have rationing solely, right, this notion that you own the animals on your property, you have to discuss why you own the property in the first place. And that's the discovery doctrine with Johnson versus McIntosh.
So I mentioned the rationale solely and how he could own it, but I didn't go that extra step on.
Yeah, look, so I mean, if you mention one, you have to mention the other, right? If you mention rationing solely, you probably should mention the discovery doctrine where you got it from the first place. Yeah, that's why I think those comments, I didn't put comments for everyone in detail because there were so many things to write about. I might have picked one or two things, but I always tried to just flag things that I was thinking of why I took points off the way I did. Okay, thanks, Luis. Anything else on the first question? Yeah, right, go ahead. Oh, you're in the classroom? I see you. I got you. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so in the sample answer, they talked about again be rich, and I get it, it's like a hunting an animal case, but at the same time, it has no effect so why bring it up, especially if we're trying to be concise in our responses.
What I would actually say is that Genby Rich is not applicable because there's no custom. I think that's an absolutely fair answer. It takes 2 sentences. I don't think that's a waste of space at all.
Okay.
I mean, let me answer your question differently. It's useful to say why a rule would not govern if it would govern, right? Those are both useful statements, right? If a case does help or doesn't help him. I think there's absolutely good use of space.
Yeah.
Don't let the word count scare you. It can be done. I know it can be done. Most students waste a lot of space anyway. They just sort of repeat themselves over and over again. So if you have a choice between mentioning a case and not mentioning it, go discuss the case. So that's always good, right? You'll find that most papers are either well under the word limit or just repeat themselves over and over again without any use.
Thank you.
Yep, my pleasure. All right, let's go on to the next one, please. We make sure we keep an eye on the clock. Where is it? Okay, let's try number. Actually, we're going to jump around. All right, so we did the bore question. All right, next about the water. Okay, the soil on rocky. I'm sorry, the rocky soil in North Acre was dry. The soil in South Acre was fertile. Wilson plants crops which were harvested, and it's more than enough food for them to eat. Wilson relies on the river to water the crops. Tom is bitter about the bore. Builds a dam on the river, blocking the water. This is what we call a spite dam, right? Wilson demands that Tom remove the dam, saying that he also has a claim to the water. Tom refuses, destroying Wilson's entire harvest. All right, so this is actually question 5. I don't always ask them in order. Sometimes I do, sometimes they don't. You have to read through. This is why you should really read the entire question before you start writing, because there might be facts later that help you with this question. Okay, so question 5. How should Tom and Wilson have resolved the dispute over the dam? Number 5 is what I call the policy question. But that doesn't mean you can just forget about law. There are still legal rules you have to discuss, even on a policy question, right? So here, what do you talk about? Water is a fugitive resource. Here, let me show you the A+ answer so you can follow along, right? Water is a fugitive resource, right? And you have different rules. You have an American rule, which is usually first in time, right? You have the English rule, okay? But then you have the Eastern and Western rules. And I think Eastern rule is probably more applicable here because there's an abundance of water. right? This person said, probably not the best answer. Wilson can apply the Western rule. I think that's probably not the best answer, but other stuff was good. With the Eastern rule, you have to have beneficial use, right? Building a dam is never a good idea because you're trying to stop people from having water. Under the Western rule, this is wasteful, and absolutely there'll be liability under the Western rule. Okay, so I think whether you apply East or West, it actually doesn't matter. I think the end result is that Tom loses for building the dam. Now, what was the question I asked, though? It wasn't just, who has a stronger claim. It's how should they resolve this dispute? And here is just sort of where policy kicks in. I want you to think about how do people resolve disputes. There are not really courts here. So maybe, some people wrote they could trade crops for water, right? Where they can say, here, if you let me have water, I'll give you some of my crops. Other people got creative and they said, the gold coins, right? You can swap gold coins for water, which I thought was actually pretty creative. There are different ways of resolving dispute absent litigation. And that's where I was getting at with this question. Okay. All right. Questions number 5. Yeah, Alexander, go ahead. You in the classroom, sir? Yeah, I see you. I got you. Go ahead. Yeah, I have you.
So you were talking about the water rules as like not to mention the Western rules to apply it to Tom. So should we just rule of thumb like one rule overarching apply to both of them?
Well, look, if it's a close call, right, you may say, here's the Eastern rule, here's the Western rule, I think Eastern's better. If it's obvious, you only need to mention one. I think here, I gave you enough facts to Eastern, but I'd be okay if you talk about both of them. I mean, it might be a closer call. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Alexander. What else? What else? No? You guys actually did pretty well on the water question. I thought the answers were, on the whole, pretty decent. All right, let's go back to the question and do but the gold coins now. Okay, so now we're on question 3. All right, so now we have a gold coin question. So left without anything to eat, Tom begins to forage the beach of North Acre for food. While digging in the sand, he discovers a buried chest. All right. A couple of you put down treasure trove, which was mentioned in the reading, but I don't think I mentioned in class. That's good. There's this doctrine called treasure trove where buried treasure belongs to the sovereign, right? So if this is a Spanish island and you find buried treasure, then the treasure belongs to Spain. We don't have a sovereign. We don't know who owns the government. There's no government that owns this property. So it's not a clear fit. But a few of you mentioned that, which I thought was actually very, very good. It shows you're reading stuff even if I don't mention in class. Okay. Okay, so he finds the chest. He doesn't remove the chest from the sand. He opens the lid and he finds it's full of coins. Okay, let me pause there. A lot of people talk about rationing solely. Wrong. Rationing solely is a doctrine for wild animals, for fugitive resources. I mentioned this in class very carefully. You don't apply a rationing solely for lost items or mislaid items. A lot of people discuss the rule of capture. Wrong. Rule of capture is for wild fugitive resources. A lot of people talk about Pearson and Genn and Keeble and Popov about the baseball, right? Wrong. Those are cases about wild animals. So again, if it's a case about a wild animal, talk about the wild animal cases and it's rationing solely. If it's a case about buried, mislaid, lost property, right? Inanimate, non-living stuff. Talk about Armory versus Delamery. Talk about Hannah versus Peel. Bridges, Sharman, the phrase locus in quo, Q-U-O, locus in quo, right? Which means property found in your property. Is it attached to your property? Is it in a shop? Is it lost? Is it mislaid? Keep your doctrine separate. I'm giving you this warning now, and the final you'll still do it, right? You'll still write about rule of capture for found property. That's not correct. All right, let me keep going. Tom realizes the island was not deserted, right? Why? If there's buried treasure there, then there have been people there before. Right? He's not the first person there. So go back now to your discussion of Johnson. Can you discover property that was not new? Can you discover property that's been discovered before? And this wasn't discovered by native people. These are by people burying treasure. Now, someone in the other class was finding the hypo, said, well, maybe the treasure chest washed ashore and got buried under sand through natural forces. Okay, I suppose it's possible. I said he realized the island was not deserted. I'm telling you what I think. I mean, you can always fight the hypo if you want, but I'm telling you, it probably was put there by someone. Okay. Now, that point becomes important, right? When you have the ring that was buried in the soil, it was lost. Someone fell off their finger probably, right? When you have the boat that was buried under the ground, someone put there by accident, right? It wasn't put there deliberately. But with buried treasure, you put it there deliberately, hoping to come back later and get it. Maybe you never come back because you have to walk the plank or something, right? But you put it there with the hopes that you can reclaim it. So is this lost property? Is this mislaid property? Is this abandoned property? I'd say none of the above. It's put there deliberately, which complicates the analysis a bit. One other issue. It's possible that the chest is attached to the land. What about the coins inside the chest? Does that apply the same way? Tom touched the chest. Tom did not touch the coins. So did he actually come into contact with the coins? No. Tom doesn't take the coins out. He leaves them there. And then Wilson seals it the next day and brings it back to bury it in his own property. And Wilson actually touches the coins. Tom demands that Wilson return the coins. Wilson refuses. What is my question here? What is Tom's strongest claim to the coins? And what is Wilson's strongest claim? You have to talk about both. You have to talk about one. You have to talk about both. Right? So I suppose for Tom, he found it on his property of Northacre. And he was the first one to find the chest. It was buried in his soil. But actually, Wilson actually physically captured. I shouldn't say captured. He actually physically took the ring, the coins out of the box. Here he's talking about Armory, Els versus Brig Gas, South Staffordshire versus Sharman, also McAvoy versus Medina. Right? Is this mislaid property? Would the owner of everything to come back to it to get it from him, or is this deliberately abandoned there? A couple people will discuss bailment, which didn't really fit, right? A bailment is really if, you're in a store or you're in some sort of relationship with a person, right? They come into your store and they leave an item there. There's some duty of care for you to hold it. I just don't think a bailment would apply if you find buried treasure, right? There's no sort of relationship that would create this, even as an involuntary bailment. I just think that argument doesn't work. A couple people put it. I mean, it wasn't wrong, but I don't think it was really a right answer. All right. Questions on number 2. Luis, go ahead.
Yes, so I was going through my outline as I was answering the problem, and I had a little hole. So I have here prior possessor rule with 5 or 6 question marks. So I wanted to clarify what that was or which case it related to. I couldn't remember.
Have you checked the video or the transcript of the class?
I have to find exactly which video it was, which class.
How am I supposed to know then? I mean, you're asking me about your notes, a gap. I have no idea what you're talking about.
So there's nothing like prior possessor rule that we talked about that you.
We spent several classes on prior possessor, so I don't know what you're.
Okay. No problem then. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to avoid your question, but we spent
I understand.
several classes on that topic. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, Alyssa.
So after I talked about all the finding rules, I also added something about, I took a rule about oil and gas and I applied it to here. Now I put in my answer that I know it's not a fugitive resource, so it may not apply, but the thing about slant drilling being a trespass, and it being illegal, I kind of likened that to, I forgot which one it was, but the guy going to the other guy's land to get the coins, like trespassing to get that.
That's a simple trespass, though. Why is that unique about slant drilling? I mean, that seems pretty. In other words, if you're saying he just trespassed by going to his property and taking his stuff, I mean, the connection to slant drilling is not ideal because you're harvesting a fugitive resource. So I think it's just a little bit too weak. If you could just say he trespassed and he took it from him, that would be fine. I mean, actually, if you want to talk about theft, maybe the answer is armory, where the little chimney sweep stole the jewel from the housekeeper, right? From the master of the house.
Okay, yeah, I was just likening the policy reasons for.
Yeah, I hear it. Yeah, it's a little bit. When you do that, it doesn't show me that you know the differences between the fugitive resources and the inanimate stuff. So it's a little probably not the best thing to do.
Well, in my answer, I acknowledged that it doesn't apply because it's not a
probably just doesn't. It's sort of it's a law student's sort of uncertainty. So I would not talk about things if they're not relevant.
Got you. Okay.
Emma, go ahead.
I had just said that he trespassed.
Yeah, that's fine. If you just said he trespassed, but the slant drilling is just a little bit too far afield.
All right.
Yep. Go ahead, Emma.
I just wanted to clarify something because getting caught up in semantics when you're reading the questions can be pretty time consuming. And
I'm sorry, what do you mean semantics? I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, I mean, for example, understanding how, for example, the chest got there. And like you said, it was probably put there intentionally. But if we understood it to be I don't know, a ship crashed or something and it washed up and then was buried under the sand, that might change our answer to it being lost property rather than something that was intentionally put there. And so that from the very beginning can change the whole answer. So I'm wondering, how do we kind of handle when we're between two? Does that make sense?
I don't like your characterization of semantic. I wrote this exam very carefully. I put facts in there very deliberately. It said, I'll read it again. It said, Tom realizes the island was not as deserted as he had thought. Right?
Okay.
I'm telling you that Tom realized that someone put it there.
Okay.
I mean, it's not. I'm not hiding it. It's right there. These are not, not writing in code. Even if you missed that point, you can still get the question, the bulk of the credit. It was sort of a fairly nuanced point, but you have to read every sentence very carefully, which is why I suggest you read the question through twice straight through before you write a word. Really, if you read a sentence and you don't know why I put it there, that means you probably missed why I put it there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Alexander, go ahead. So you mentioned earlier about the point that because he realized there are other people there or had been on the island before wasn't completely deserted, that would affect the analysis of the Franklin class case. Could you go into that more about would that invalidate it completely because it's not
Oh yeah, sure. Happy to do it. Happy to answer the question. So think about it this way, right? In McAvoy, the court distinguished between a wallet on a counter versus a wallet on the floor, right? With the wallet on the counter, it was just mislaid, right? You went to go pay your bill, you put your wallet down the counter and you forgot it was there, right? And that's perfectly fine, right? If you come back and say, you know what, I lost my wallet. Remember, I went to go pay for my barber and I put my wallet on the counter and I forgot it was there. You'd go to the barber to try to get your wallet back. Okay. When the wallet's on the floor, that means it maybe fell out of your pocket, right? Or you dropped it. That's lost, right? It's less likely that a person who finds lost property would go back to the shop because you don't know where he lost it, right? This case, though, I think is a little bit different. I mean, yes, of course, Emma might be right that this shipwrecked and then got buried under 10 feet of sand. I suppose it's possible. Those are not the facts I gave you. Again, students often read things into facts that aren't there rather than taking the most simple reading that is there. It's just something that law students always do. But when you have something there, it wasn't abandoned, it wasn't lost, it wasn't mislaid. It was, I think, from the facts, put there deliberately for someone to reclaim it later.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me restate my question. I was asking about Johnson v. McIntosh, but
I'm sorry. It's hard to hear with the audio.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's okay.
I apologize.
Because I was asking, so you said earlier that Tom, all right, like, so I put that like Tom Owens Northaker through, discovery.
No one got this, by the way. In both sections, no one picked up on this fact. The fact that there were people there before means it wasn't actually Johnson versus McIntosh. It wasn't discovery. 0 people picked up on it, which is fine. I always have certain things that no one picks up on. But if a student had written that because people were there before, he can't claim ownership under the discovery doctrine, that's fine. You can still claim under the finder doctrine, right? Even if you don't own Northaker, you can still claim it under discovery. Not discovery, under acquisition by find. You don't need to own it, but it would change the answer a little bit.
Okay, and I hate to bounce around, but it would affect rationing solely, right?
No. The rationing solely is for fugitive resources.
Right, and that's what I said. I didn't want to bounce it around,
but the phrase is actually locus in quo, right? Remember that? Yeah, LOCUS in quo QUOW. That's the relevant doctrine.
Right, and I had that in this one. I'll ask you during this weekend, but I meant going back to like question 1 about the thoughts that I know I'm bouncing around.
Right, exactly. If you said that they didn't own the property because there's no discovery doctrine, then you couldn't claim rationing solely. That's correct. You could still claim acquisition by hunting, by capture. That's fine. That doesn't depend on you owning the property. Even if you're trespassing, you could still say you have a capture doctrine.
Okay.
Right, because let's say 2 people are trespassing on a person's property, right? And one of them captures a fox. The owner of the property can come in and say, "Hey, this is my fox. It's my property. You're allowed to do that." But between the 2 of them, they can still claim capture doctrine. Got it?
Yes.
All right. Alyssa, is your hand up?
No, I'm good.
You good? Okay. Grayson, go ahead.
So for discovery doctrine, is we're just talking about the applicability of it just now. So the reason why I didn't put it in my answers was because I thought that it was specifically for European nations. But now I understand that if it's applicable, we should still go ahead and state it. So I get that. But am I wrong for thinking that?
Well, 2 things. So first, the instructions say you can rely on any common law, natural law principles American courts have cited. So the instructions tell you can cite it.
Right. So, but the doctrine literally, I thought it was literally just for European nations specifically.
I don't think there's anything in the question telling you not to follow that doctrine.
But just the rule of the doctrine, I'm saying that the doctrine was, but that's why the Indians couldn't do it because they weren't the European nation.
I think if you read these facts, the facts are consistent with the European people getting shipwrecked. I think the facts would suggest that they're writing out conveyances and writing, they're doing things that are consistent with it. So I think you really have to draw a lot of inferences to not follow that doctrine here. Right? I mean, I get what you're saying, but it's a lot easier to read this question and think that this would be consistent with Johnson rather than say that maybe they're like native people who aren't, right? I mean, you have to work very hard to get to that conclusion. Okay? And if there's any doubt, I have lots of old exams where I ask this question every year. I've never once had a student suggest that. So you're not wrong, but it's just, let me address Grayson's point a little more broadly. Writing an exam is hard because I'm not in there with the room with you, right? I can't see what's in your head. I'm not able to. So I have to try to anticipate all the various twists and turns you can take. I think I get most of them, but always students raise some issues that I just didn't think of. And they sort of stack inference upon inference to draw up these conclusions like, that a thing was buried under sand because of a shipwreck, not because it was buried there deliberately, which again, is not unreasonable, right? Grayson says the facts don't say whether these were European nations. We don't know who they are. Tom Wilson, they could be natives, right? We don't know. My advice for the exam is if you're not sure, try to draw the most reasonable inference based on what I gave you, right? Don't try to think that, this is some unusual set of circumstances that are very unlikely to happen. I will, if it's not clear, think of what is the most reasonable inference from what I wrote. That's the best I can help you with. Yes, Grayson, go ahead.
All right. So just after seeing your comments, what I told myself is I'm just going to apply all the applicable law. And if I do the analysis right, like even if I did include in my analysis that I don't know if they're a European nation, would that be wrong? Or
if you had said on your exam, I don't know that the European nations, therefore I'm not going to apply Johnson, I would give you credit for that. That's a smart answer, right?
Okay.
But don't keep it in your head. In other words, if you want to make an unusual inference, explain it, right? Show your work, so to speak, and I can give you partial credit.
Yeah, that's like the biggest thing I've learned. Like make sure to
show your work. Show your work. Come again. I've had people who say things like, "Wow, I didn't think of that. That's creative. It's not right, but that's really creative. I'll give you partial credit for it." And there you get your points. Okay. All right. Thank you. Good question, though. All right. Let's move on. I want to do the future interest questions now, which gave people a lot of difficulty, which is to be expected, right? We just finished the topic. It was somewhat new. But this is where I would say people lost the bulk of their points without question on numbers. Was it 4 and 5? All righty. I'll put the screen share. All right. Here we go. The next day, a box washes ashore in Southacre. Now, again, does Wilson actually own Southacre? Maybe yes, maybe no with discovery doctrine. But I don't think it really matters because he found it, right? It washed ashore. He was the first one to get it, so he has a stronger claim to it. Wilson tells Tom about it. Tom asks Wilson if he can have it. He's basically asking for a gift. Okay, without writing anything down, why is this important? Statute of Frauds. Any conveyance for property must be in writing. The next question is in writing, right? So you know there are going to be statute of frauds problem. Now, a lot of you wrote about the statute of wills and the testamentary gift. It's wrong for several reasons, but I'll give you one very good reason at the outset. This is not a class in wills. I am not going to ask you about the statute of wills. I don't think I've ever actually, if I have, it's rare. And it's going to be really obvious if I've done it. I want you to write about future interests. Okay? The purpose of this class, or at least this unit, is to discuss future interests. We've discussed the statute of wills. It's useful for you to know. But if you know nothing about the question, presume I am not asking you about the statute of wills. I mean, maybe I will if it's really obvious, but I am probably not doing that. If you read the question, it should be really obvious I'm not asking about a will. Why? He tells Wilson says he will use the flashlight for the rest of his life, and then Tom can have it. Tom agrees. This is not a testamentary gift, right? You don't tell someone about a gift like this and they agree to it. Why? A testamentary gift can be revoked at any time prior to death. This gift cannot be revoked. This is an inter vivos gift. Wilson gave Tom a gift during his life. And read what it says. Wilson will use it for the rest of his life, then Tom can have it. This is like Gruen versus Gruen, the painting case. Wilson reserved for himself a life estate. What's a future interest that follows a life estate to a third party? It's a remainder to Tom. Tom has a vested remainder in fee simple. Why is it vested? Tom's ascertained. And there's no condition precedent. This is a simple life estate followed by a vested remainder. And people got really tripped up by it. It was not a hard one. I wrote it in an unusual fashion, but people really got tripped up by it. Okay, a few points. One, is delivery necessary? Well, you don't need to actually deliver the gift. Why? It's a future interest. Now, with a future interest, you don't have to actually hand over the item because you're not giving the person the item, right? With the painting, there's no obligation to actually deliver the painting from the father to the son. You can use symbolic or constructed delivery, like a letter. This will be void because of the statute of frauds, right? Because there was no writing. But it doesn't fail because of lack of actual delivery. The next question, there is delivery symbolic. There's a handover of a letter. But in this question, there's no symbolic delivery. Okay? If there's no valid gift, then Tom just retains a fee simple. All right, Alyssa, go ahead.
This is the one that I wasn't confused about it on the midterm, but then when I read the A+ answer, their answer confused me.
Okay. By the way, the A+ is not perfect. And I don't want to pretend it's perfect because there are things always that you tweak, but I'm happy to talk about it. So what in the A+ answer may have given you some confusion?
Yeah, so they started off by saying that the flashlight was a gift to Wilson.
Oh, yeah. This was wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't, they were like,
Yeah.
oh, they have to and putting it in the box.
Okay, yeah, let me address this. Thank you, Liz, for reminding me. A lot of people said that Wilson had a gift. From who? Who gave it, right? This question said, how did I phrase it? It said, it washed ashore, right? So this is the hypo, it fell off a boat, maybe it was a shipwreck. No one intended to give it to Wilson, right? We have no idea who this person is. Not a clue, right? We have no idea who this person is. Not a clue. There's no gift. This was a found chattel under Hannah, an armory. Yeah, I think the person, if this were a gift, they hedged, right? They did what I told you not to do. If it were a gift, it's like the elements were all met. I would not do this sort of alternative argument. Someone asked that before. Again, the A+ is not perfect. It's really good. There are other things I thought were excellent about this answer, which is why I put it there. I'm always tempted to rewrite the A+ answer and take out bad stuff. I'm like, no, don't do that, Josh. It's bad. Don't do that. Because then I won't know what to take out. But Alyssa, you're 100% correct. That's not a good answer. Grayson, go ahead.
Yeah. How do we come to the conclusion that Tom's vested remainder is in fee simple and not in life estate?
Well, the general presumption is conveyances are going to be in fee simple, right? It didn't specify for how long he has it, so the presumption is fee simple.
Right. Unfortunately, I didn't really do much analysis. I didn't take your advice and look at the midterm, so I didn't really know about the detailed analysis that's supposed to go into this. So if I were to give an analysis, I put life estate and explain why I thought it was life estate. Could that be right, or in no circumstance?
I don't think. What in the facts would tell you this could be remainder life estate?
Well, it's just from the facts, it doesn't seem like he's giving all the sticks. It's for sure that he can have it at that time.
But who would get if it's only remainder in life estate? Who has reversion?
Whoever. I guess that there was no grantor.
Well, the grantor would be what's his face, Wilson. So it goes back to him. I mean, look again. You're sort of drawing a lot of inferences when there's a much simpler answer there. That's much more obviously right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, understood.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you, Grayson. Any other questions on the flashlight case? Yeah, Susan, go ahead.
Kind of there. I somehow missed this, and I hope I'm not the only one, but I might be.
You're never, by the way, you're never, this is a true statement, Susan, I promise you. If you're not sure about something, there's other 15 people with the exact same question. They just don't want to ask it. So so I'm so happy you raised your hand. Go for it.
Okay. I somehow missed vested, and I'm not sure how to tell when it's a vested interest.
Oh boy. Go rewatch our last couple classes. We spent a lot of time on those topics, right? Is the person ascertained? Is there a condition precedent? There are these two factors you got to consider. But we spent a lot of time on those issues. But thank you, Susan. All right, Alexandra, go ahead.
Yeah, so when I got my exam back and I was comparing with the A+ answer, I was like, there's no way that, like, because I got the answer right, but I didn't actually talk about inter vivos gift, and I think that's the points that I missed. So as long as you have the future interest and the present interest, and you kind of like miss some of that detail in there, you can still technically get it right.
Yeah.
Just not as right. Is that what I'm? Because I thought I got it completely wrong, and then I looked at the answer and
it's not about.
Yeah.
Look, it's not about right or wrong. It's how many points you get. Right.
Mhm.
10 is perfect. If you miss some stuff, maybe you get a 9. If you miss more stuff, you get an 8. If you miss more stuff, you get a 7. Right. I get very few 10s, by the way. It's very hard to get a 10. So if you get a 9, you're in good shape. 8 means you're.
That's why
Go ahead. No, if you. I don't. Go ahead.
I got a 9 on it, but I missed, like, the sample answer was solely on inter vivos gift, and I didn't say those words anywhere in my question or in my answer. And so I got really confused at first thinking I got it wrong, but like the more I looked at it, I think it's just like I approached it differently.
Well, look, maybe there's like 5 or 6 things to think about, and maybe the A+ got like 4 of those, and you got 3 of those, but 3 different ones, right? So they don't always overlap, right? You can have 2 people that both get a 10 on the question and did completely different issues, right? I write these questions in such a way, Alex, that you can still get a really good score, and your person next to you get a good score, and you write completely different issues, and that's completely possible.
Okay.
But you have to get the right answer, though, right? There's right answers and there's wrong answers, but there's different answers you can talk about. So it's almost like you pick your poison, right? If you choose an answer, you have to make sure you get it right, right?
Okay.
I grade you wherever you go. So if you decide to go on path A, I'm going to make sure you follow path A, right?
Okay.
If you decide to follow path, remember the Choose Your Own Adventures book when you were a kid, right? If you follow that path, you can't die on it, right? You have to actually make it till the end, right? You have to actually make the right decisions to get there.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Alex. Anything else in the flashlight question? All right, let's go on. We got about 15 minutes left. Let's go on to the last one. The North Acre question. All right. Where is it? Okay. All right, here we go. Later that year, Tom becomes ill. Let me stop right here. All I said was that Tom was ill. I did not say he was dying. I did not say he was on his deathbed. I said nothing that would tell you this was a gift causa mortis. This is perhaps, again, stop drawing inferences that are not present. Sick people are allowed to make conveyances without dying, right? People can be sick. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, conveyances for land are very unlikely to be these sort of deathbed confessions, right? It's not like, oh, you can have my furniture and whatever else you're pointing to. So this is not a gift causa mortis. A lot of you just fell for that. And again, you call it semantics, whatever you will, they're facts. You have to pay very close attention to the facts. Tom becomes ill and he writes the following conveyance. Okay, writing. We have now compliance with the statute of frauds. In the prior question, we did not have the statute of frauds complied with. Here, we're complying with the statute of frauds. Okay. And let me go to the last sentence. Wilson accepts the conveyance. This is not how a will works. With a will, usually the testator holds on to it and it's probated after his death. But here, it's actually delivery. He's writing a conveyance and he's handing to him. This is symbolic delivery, right? This is an inter vivos conveyance. This is absolutely not a testamentary gift. Absolutely not a testamentary gift. Okay, what does it say? I will continue to live in North Acre, but if I die, then to Wilson and his heirs. Some of you actually wrote that you conveyed a life estate through a will, which makes no sense because the will only kicks in after the guy's death. You can't convey a life estate through a will because the person's already dead, right? It makes no sense. So, life estate. I will continue to live on North Acre, right? This is kind of like Jesse Lyde's case. Remember, she can live in my house, which is kind of like a life estate. So I will continue to live on Northacre, comma, but if I die, comma, then to Wilson and his heirs. If the present interest is a life estate and the future interest goes to a third party, it's a remainder. This remainder is vested. Why is it vested? Wilson's ascertained. And there's no condition precedent. This was Susan's question. Why is there no condition precedent? Josh, but if I die, right? That's not a condition precedent. That's a natural termination. Upon the expiration of Tom's life estate, it goes to Wilson. This is a natural death. This is a vested remainder in fee simple. Now, a lot of people saw but if and they said, oh, Josh, it's a fee simple subject. The condition subsequent. No, not even close. There's no fee simple at all. It's a life estate held by future interest. Don't get tripped up by the but if. Now, some people wrote there was a springing executory interest. My goodness. Right? There's no executory interest here. Death is natural. Immediately upon the death of Tom, it goes to Wilson. There's no holding. There's no cutting short. It's right away. There's no execution. So again, this was a vested remainder followed by, a life estate followed by a vested remainder in fee simple. The answers for 3 and 4 are the same. They're actually the same answer. Some of you may have gotten comfortable with that, but they're exactly the same, just phrased in very different fashions. Okay. Questions on number 4? Yeah, Taylor, go ahead. I think you're in the classroom. Yep, I got you. All right, go ahead.
So I understand that it's not a gift causa mortis because it was just ill, not him about to die. But in my answer, I have written that a gift causa mortis can be revoked if a person is better. Is that not true?
Oh, yeah, no, that's a true statement, right? With the gift causa mortis and the person recovers, you can revoke it. But here, I don't think you can call this a gift causa mortis because he actually gave him the symbolic delivery, handed it to him. I don't think this gift can be revoked. Right? Usually the gift causa mortis is usually not in writing. It's usually done by a deathbed with the person sort of just talking or pointing, right? These facts are really consistent with the test, with this sort of gift that can be revoked. I don't think this gift can be revoked under the circumstances.
Okay, now that makes sense. So since it was an inter vivos gift, like hands down, that can't be revoked.
Nope. This was his future interest, his remainder. Can't be taken away.
Thank you.
Yep. What else? What else? Yeah, Alexander, here, let me put the classroom off mute. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so because it's inter vivos gift, we talk about only statute of frauds, not statute of frauds.
I'm sorry, just the last thing was a little bit blurry. Can you say it one more time, please?
Only statute of frauds, not statute of frauds,
Right, yeah, the statute of fraud always applies to conveyance of property. There's always sort of lurking in the background. But the statute of wills is only relevant for a testamentary gift. And here there's not going to be a testamentary gift. That's correct. Again, if you're sitting for my final and you want to write the answer as a statute of wills, think very carefully. I'm not going to say it's 100% wrong, but you're probably missing something or you misread the question. It's not always, but like I can go back and check my old exams. I very rarely will make an answer statute of wills unless it's really obvious that it's testamentary. Now, what I could often ask is, let's say it's not clear if a gift is inter vivos or testamentary. Maybe I say in the fact pattern that nothing is conveyed during life and it's only conveyed after his death. Well, that would be testamentary, right? So that I can test you on, but it's very rarely I'll say, well, statute of wills, you need signatures. It's too easy to test on. You have to know what kind of gift it is in the first place.
Right, okay.
Thank you. What else? What else? We're done. I mean, I finished the exam. I could do other stuff, but what else is on your mind? What other questions? Yes, Luis, go ahead.
So now that the midterm's kind of over and we're gonna obviously be learning more things that go into the final, how soon should we start looking at sample answers and practicing your sample exams? Because if we do it now, obviously we're not gonna know half the stuff because we haven't learned it. So what is a good timetable to start, I guess, doing those practice exams under time conditions?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Luis. Thank you. So a couple answers. First, I also have old midterms, and those are, you know, you can take those whenever you want. One tricky part, and I don't want to say this as sort of like as a criticism, but it takes me a while to review a midterm, right? So let's say I gave a midterm in 2015. I don't remember it. I can only remember so much. So if you come to an officer, it's like, hey, I did the spring 2015 midterm. Can you go over it? I'm probably going to say I don't remember it, and it'll take me maybe 20 minutes to review the question, and I can't do that in short order. So if there's interest in taking old midterms, we're probably going to have to do it in a more organized fashion. In other words, I'll probably say I'll review this midterm, and you can take that one. That way I don't have like you doing 2016 and someone else doing 2017 and she does 2019, and it's like quadruple the amount of exams I have to know. Now, in terms of when can you start taking the actual finals, mid-April. By mid-April, probably you're able to. I mean, you may not know like a couple things at the end, but you can probably do okay. I encourage you to do them, and I'm happy to go over them with you. But the A+ and the memo are really there for your advantage, because it's really designed to show you what your classmates did at least in that year. It's often, again, hard for me to sort of review all the midterms, so I don't always remember them all, but I'll try to say, hey, if you want to do, spring 2018, okay, I'll go over that one. And that just makes it a lot more effective. That answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So I could just like maybe email you like in 2 weeks, can we do this? Schedule this.
And then maybe I'll say something in class, because like what happened last year was like in one office hour session, I think there were 3 people did 3 different exams. My head almost exploded because I couldn't keep track of all the exams. Like I didn't remember them. So maybe if we try and do this a little bit more systematic way, it makes it easier for me to help you.
Okay, maybe like in our group chat, we can set up like a time thing.
Oh, that's cute. I like that idea. That's a good idea. I like that. Yeah. I know you guys have a group chat talking about everything. That's helpful. All right. Thank you. All right. Grace, I see your hands up, and then Alyssa.
Yeah, just wanted to voice that I think people would definitely take that opportunity of doing it.
Yeah. You know what then? Maybe I'll just in class in about 2 weeks, if you remind me, I'll just pick one and then we'll do that. Spare you the shame of having to do the group chat argument. I have to look back and I hesitate slightly because I don't always teach the same way every year. And there might be something I focused on last year that I didn't focus on this year. So it may not be the perfect midterm. I picked this one because it was actually pretty good. I think this one was a good exam. So the island case, because it matched up pretty well. But some of my older exams may not be the best. And just, I've been teaching now for my 9th year. My older exams are not as good. They've gotten better at writing. Exam writing is hard. It's not an easy skill. I got to tell you, it's not. Any of you were teachers before. Writing a good exam question is hard because I got like 70 really smart students who all try and hack my exams, saying, oh, you forgot this and you didn't mention this and you got to think about this thing and the buried treasure under the ocean, right? So I got to just be very careful. So I'll pick maybe another exam for you guys to look at, and then if you want to do it, then I can go over it. Yeah, Alyssa, go ahead.
Okay, so there was one part of my outline that I was unsure about how to apply, and that's the rule for Marinholtz.
This is with the it was the Illinois case about the school property and the whether there was a possibly reverter or a right of entry, right? Okay, just had to replay the case in my head.
Yeah, so I took away from that case that the general rule is that if there's ambiguity, then courts favor they favor the fee simple subject to condition subsequent, but then the actual court in that case ruled that it was a fee simple determinable followed by possibility reverter. So are we supposed to apply both of those?
Well, so just be careful here, right? The preference, right, is for the right of entry. Why? Because it's not automatic. But the language is best read to convey a possibly reverter, then that's what you go with, right? In other words, if you're really not sure, then the presumption is right of entry. But in this case, the language was pretty clear for a possibly reverter. I think that's the way to reconcile what your question is.
Got you. Also, in the actual case, it said that the Court of Illinois expressed the preference for that right of reentry. So does that mean that only Illinois does it, or?
I think that's a pretty general rule. I haven't done a 50-state survey, but I think that's a pretty good general rule.
Okay.
It's a good question. Yeah, I don't know the answer, but I'm pretty sure the Illinois rules is a good rule for you to follow.
Makes sense. What I need.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, who else? Going once? Going twice? All right. We'll have office hours today at 2:45. I will start the minute poll for you to please fill in. I think this is pretty good. We got through everything in 75 minutes. Hopefully this was helpful, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys grow and develop. Thank you so much.